Am I the idiot for being upset that my wife wanted to work out with a homewrecker? My EM44, wife F43, has a colleague from works Joe, and Joe split from his wife a year ago. Joe also runs a home-based business as a fitness instructor. The way I understand it, he has his basement and backyard full of equipment and people pay him in either groups or as individuals for training in his basement. My wife took part as part of a group this summer. The sessions were at 7:30 a.m., and she told me one day that as she was arriving, a different colleague of hers, female, middle-aged, also a client of his, came walking out of his kitchen having a coffee, clearly having spent the night. The thing is, this woman just split with her husband 4 weeks earlier. Now I don't have evidence, but it seems to me that due to only 4 weeks passing and she is already announcing to colleagues that they are sleeping together, they very likely had something before she split with her husband, and it very likely was a contributing factor in her split from her family, hence the term homewrecker. Fast forward 4 weeks. My wife tells me she wants to go with a friend 2 evenings per week to this guy's place to work out with him in his basement. At first I said that I was not going to say no, but after thinking about it for a couple days, I told my wife I didn't like it and I wasn't comfortable with it. Well, she goes ahead and signs up anyway. After I told her I wasn't comfortable with it, she doesn't tell me until an hour before the first session. Well, I was quite pissed and we had a fight. She ended up canceling the workout sessions, but only did it because I basically told her to. She doesn't think anything is wrong with it and thinks I'm wrong here. It's been 2 weeks and we have been cold and distant ever since. Edit for more info. I asked my wife if she thinks the guy was moving on the woman while she was still married, and she agrees it's likely. I also asked my wife if the roles were reversed and I was working out with a female colleague in her basement and it was assumed she slept with a married guy at my work contributing to a divorce, if she would be comfortable with it, and she wouldn't say either way. Again, while I understand it doesn't come off that way, I trust my wife. I don't trust the guy and just didn't like the situation. Comment 1. NTA, it is obvious, if the story was reversed, she would not like it. And, while I may get hammered for saying this, if SHE were here making this post, many of the people here claiming that you are TA would be singing a different tune. I would be saying the same thing as you. Going to some guy's basement to exercise? Really? That seems like a good idea when you are married? Leave out the fact of the guy seeming to have an affair with someone married. It's still a bad idea. Your wife wouldn't like it if you were doing this with a woman in exercise clothes in her basement. Edit. Wow, thanks for the awards. Never had this popular of a post. I appreciate it. Edit 2. Wow, thanks again for the additional rewards. Comment 2. We all know exactly how it would go, a female trainer that makes a habit of sleeping with her married customers doing training in her home gym. It would be a mix between he's hitting that girl, divorce him, he's got a sugar baby, etc. The only surprise here is that Ida recognized how much it hates men in this thread. As for OP, mate, even if she ain't hitting that, she's thinking about it. Maybe as a backup plan, maybe soon, maybe already. The fact that she couldn't say she would be comfortable with a gender-swapped version tells you everything you need to know. Nobody in a relationship should be engaging in behavior they wouldn't be happy if their partner did. The best case is she's keeping her options open. Now for the next story. Am I the idiot for being upset with my wife for going out clubbing with her girlfriends, but she leaves her ring at home so she can get free drinks? Wife has been going out clubbing with friends every Friday night for a while now. Just recently saw that she left her ring at home tonight. I texted her telling she left it at home tonight, and she responded telling me it's so she can get free drinks from guys. Wouldn't this mean she's flirting with other guys so she can get free drinks from them? Not sure how to feel about this or how to reply. Will telling her I feel uncomfortable open a can of worms? Comment 1. Young grasshopper. Let me level up your deception and insight in one training session. You leave the ring at home because you can make a simple story with enough truth in the lie to be believable. If you take it off at the club, you could lose the ring. Then you got to explain why you wore the ring to the club and then took it OFF at the club and now lost $4,000 somewhere on the floor. You have leveled up. Comment 2. Oh, they do. Like you said, it's a size thing. Happened to my husband a year or so after we married. Here's the story for anyone bored enough. He likes to hang his arm out the car window in the summer. He was cruising down a busy stretch of highway, past our pal's local business and getting ready to turn onto our street. And it just slid right off his finger. He pulled over and searched, but the traffic was crazy, 4 lanes of nuts, and he needed to quit. He popped into pal's place and advised what happened as it was close to his shop. He couldn't believe it just fell off. He was beating himself up and came home very upset. We were both quite bummed as the ring couldn't just be replaced due to its sentimental value. About 2 months later, pal called and asked for a hand with something. When husband got there, he handed him his wedding ring. It was battered, dented, a bit warped and scratched, but it was his ring. He was surprised and happy as we had both resigned to the loss. It turned up down the street a ways. Pal's employee had walked down to their second biz lot, car sales. He spotted something glimmering in the sand on the opposite side of the 4-lane highway as he crossed on foot to get to the lot, on the other side. And our jeweler did a surprisingly sweet job making it look new again. We were happy just to have it back. Dents and all, so that was pretty damn pleasing. Update. As I got a lot of feedback about how to handle the situation. Thanks a lot for all of that. It was an unexpected and overwhelming response and I went through as many as I could. I know it's been a few months, but I needed time to think and talk with my wife about the whole thing. It's been brought to my attention that I may have not been the best husband. We both have many flaws, and have been far from perfect in this relationship, and it turns out we both have terrible communication skills. Long story short, when she came home that night we talked, argued about it. The argument led to me walking out to go stay at my brother's house for 2 nights. My brother, who is also married, suggested marriage counseling to see if we can get any suspicions or issues out in the open easier, so I called her, recommended it, and we had a session booked for the following week. Yes, she admitted during counseling that she did occasionally make out with other guys when going out drinking with friends. On her behalf, her issue was that she felt I was not prioritizing her enough. That I wasn't giving her enough time. Also, that I never bothered to ask what she wanted from me. She has been considering a divorce for about a year now, so this might be what our relationship would ultimately come to. I'm purposefully leaving out a lot of personal information as I don't really like sharing everything. But all I have to say is that this past year for us hasn't exactly been the best for us. This might be the most time we have spent talking every day for a while, discussing divorce plans, where we plan to go, who's keeping what, etc. We don't hate each other. We both realized we are drifting apart, sooner than we realized. But we aren't really motivated enough to keep ourselves together. This might be for the best. If I hadn't posted anything about the ring situation and approached it head-on, I probably would have been in even more of a mess. Thanks guys. TLDR, we went to marriage counseling. She admitted she made out with other guys. I don't prioritize her enough. We are getting a divorce. Comment 1. Trickle truthing is a thing, look it up. Most adults simply do not stop at making out. It is up to you if you want to go down that rabbit hole, though. Also, the excuses of not getting enough prioritization or attention are not really an excuse for cheating, in my opinion. You may be at fault for being a shitty husband, but you are not at fault for her messing around with other guys. That is a separate choice that she made. I hope everything works out for you and wish you the best. Comment 2. I was going to say this in his previous posts, but like OP here said, trickle truth. I call it half-truths. She did not just make out with guys, she definitely has been cheating. Confess to a smaller crime. These are some red flags. One thing though I like to say to guys in such situations, as hard as it is. There is absolutely no point in discussions or talks. It is premeditated and you will never look the same to her again in her eyes. Just break talks and let your lawyers do the talking. Now for the next story. Am I the idiot for uninviting my cousins for my wedding for feeding info to my mom? I 28 am an only child. When I was 12 my parents divorced when my dad found out my mom cheated on him. This was devastating to my dad. My parents were best friends and started dating when they were 17. I played sports and my dad was my coach, so I had a much closer relationship to him than my mom. I was supposed to spend 1 week at my mom's, then the next week at my dad's. But I would usually just lock myself in my room at my mom's. Usually my dad would drop me off and I would get on my bike and ride the couple miles back to his house. My mom would ask me things and I would literally pretend like she didn't exist. It got so bad that lawyers got involved, thinking my dad was turning me against my mom. My dad encouraged me to spend time with my mom, but I couldn't. My mom tried putting us in therapy, but I would just sit there till the time was up, not saying a word to her. Eventually, my mom broke down and let me just live with my dad. I haven't spoken a word to my mom in 15 years. She would show up to my games alone. Sometimes I would ask my dad to tell her to leave. Sometimes I didn't even notice she was there. She would try talking to me after and I would walk right past her. I cut her whole family off besides a few of my cousins that were around my age. She showed up to my high school graduation and I asked a couple teachers to remove her and they did. She never dated anyone else to my knowledge and was still attempting to reconcile with my dad a few years before he passed. Calling it the biggest mistake of her life and begging my dad to forgive her. When my dad passed a couple years ago, she tried to show up to the funeral and I met her outside to ask her to leave. My fiancée Rachel was with me when I did this and my mom cried upon learning we were engaged. Rachel introduced herself as my fiancée, saying she couldn't believe I hated her still this many years later. So last week I received a letter from my mom with a large check inside. In the letter she said she couldn't live knowing she wouldn't be invited to her only child's wedding. That her whole family is hurt that I cut them off. And that she had been keeping tabs on me all these years through my cousin's updates out of respect for me, but couldn't handle not being at the wedding. I ripped the check up and sent it back to the return address. She shouldn't have even known my address as I keep her blocked on all social media. I called up my cousins who admitted that since I was 14 they have been providing my mom with updates on me. Prom pics, college updates, engagement photos, and they sent her my address. I was so mad that I told them they wouldn't be invited to the wedding anymore because I don't want my mom getting access to it. Rachel is saying I'm going too far now and uninviting my cousins along with freezing out my mom's whole family because of her actions is an move. Edit, the cheating was with a teammate's dad. This was highly embarrassing for me and caused me to have to move towns. Caused me to lose friends. Comment 1. I can say this from personal experience. I was in a relationship for years with someone who had a temper, but wasn't worried because it had never been directed at me. Well, when you live together and that person is stressed and you are the only other person there, guess who gets to be on the receiving end of that temper? OP's level of unrelenting pettiness towards his mother is massively concerning. Someone with this level of immaturity and bitterness in their heart is not ready for marriage. YTA. Comment 2. This is really insightful. One of the things that stood out to me the most is how he mentioned that his parents tried to put him in therapy, and he would sit there in silence. That's honestly heartbreaking to me. I think he could really benefit from going to therapy now. There's a point when your anger and rage is poisoning you, and I think he's well past it. There's a lot of built-up feelings that need to be processed and dealt with.